Good afternoon. Please be seated and come to order. Welcome to the Santa Barbara County Republican Party's Congressional Candidate Forum. My name is Christine Mollenkoff, and I serve as the first Vice Chair of the Santa Barbara County Republican Party, and it is my privilege and honor this afternoon to moderate this debate. As you can see, it's going to be a little less of a debate than we had been hoping for. Unfortunately, Lieutenant Governor Maldonado was called to a funeral in San Luis Obispo this morning, and so we were advised that he would be unable to attend. He was going to send a representative to make a statement on his behalf, and she may be arriving later, so we will allow her to make that statement.
Without change seats and take both sides.
Mr. Mitchum is going to be very gracious and answer both sides of the question. So instead, we're going to treat this, I guess, as my interview for Fox News, and I will just be asking the questions of Mr. Mitchum, and you can all learn a little bit about him, what his positions are, and what he believes he can do for the citizens of this district if elected to go to Washington, D.C. So without further ado, Mr. Mitchum, if you'd like to go ahead and make an introductory statement and let everybody know why it is you're running and why you're the best candidate for the job.
Well, let's start with, first of all, thank you for putting this on, and thank all of you for being here today. It shows that you are serious people about this country. A little bio information first. I was born in Los Angeles, raised in Los Angeles. Spent 4 years at the University of Pennsylvania, a year of graduate work at the University of Arizona, a degree in literature. I was married for 32 years, 4 children, 5 grandchildren, and I can best describe my divorce by telling you that my ex-wife in 2008 was a precinct captain for Obama. Spent 34 years in the film industry. First 2 years were in production behind the camera, then I switched over to acting and writing. I had a handful of screenplays produced. I've done some 60 films in 14 different countries around the world. I have a Chinese Golden Horse Award, Indonesian Golden Reel Award, and then my mother gets you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Have a U.S. Photoplay Gold Medal Award. I had the pleasure of starring with some of the greatest actors worldwide. It's been a wonderful career, and I have no regrets about it. Now I have several small businesses that I take care of. My political background, back in the 80s, the only elected office I ever obtained was I was asked to run for the board of directors at the Screen Actors Guild. I ran, was elected. We had a job to do, which was get Ed Aston, the president, out of office. He was using the bully pulpit of SAG to advocate for the Sandinista communists. And the person who led our side was a man named Charles Heston. And we got in there, 14 of us got elected to the Guild, and we managed to quiet Ed down and get him to not run for another term of office. During the course of that, I was elected to National First Vice President of the 74,000 member union. He an incumbent who was 10 terms incumbent and thought unbeatable. And you have to remember that National First Vice President was one notch under Bill President Ronald Reagan, so we learned our politics in the same place. 1998, I got a call from Assembly Leader Bill Leonard. He said, "Chris, we've been watching you," which made me a little nervous. He said, "We would like you to run for state assembly." So in February of 98, I said, "Okay, I will." Not knowing anything about it, I learned a lot very quickly. We raised in 8 months $996,000, which was a state record for a state assembly seat. We had 32% registration. I got over 87% of the declined state in a Democrat year, and finished with almost 15 points above our registration. You put those numbers in today's race, I'm going to have 53% of the vote against Lois Gass. A few years ago, I, like I'm sure all of you, watched with disbelief while Progressive named Pelosi herded up a flock of moderate Democrats and got them to spit in the face of the American people and turn their back on our Constitution, which is based on we the people, government of and by and for the people, and they shoved Obamacare down our throat. And I took issue with that. I took issue to see my government become a totalitarian government and tell us what to do. Bailouts, I don't see as helpful. I see as government insidious way to start nationalizing business in the United States. decided to get into the race, and I jumped in hard and heavy. I'm not a politician. I didn't have a machine like Abel Maldonado. I haven't been in politics for 16 years. You know, at the Guild, I did my job, and then I left. You know, job complete. So I had to go back to my basic roots. And my basic roots, 1964, I voted for Barry Goldwater. He was a family friend, and my politics are basically Goldwater politics. And I looked around, and there was a movement in America that held the same basic tenets that I did, which are smaller government, lower taxes, strong defense, free market society, get government off our back. And this movement was called the Tea Party. And they took me in with open arms, and I have a great relationship with the Santa Barbara Tea Party, freedom rallies up in Santa Maria, North County Patriots up in Tascaderos, Paso Robles. But I need to broaden my reach. As I said in 98, I reached in and took 87% of the declined the state vote. I can do that again. But they need to see me. They need to hear my voice. So now I'm coming before the Grand Old Party, the California Republican Party, to get their endorsement.
Yay!
And the message doesn't change. I don't pander because the audience changes. The message is true. And I think it's a message that all of you here hold and believe, that our Constitution actually means something. And it's a message that I'll carry forward, and I think it's a message that can lead our country back to where it needs to be, back into the basic principles of republicanism, back to our Constitution and the government of and by and for the people. And for that, I'm here today, and I hope I can get your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchum. At this time, I'd like to introduce a member of our Central Committee. This is Erica Maldonado. She will be making a statement on behalf of Lieutenant Governor Maldonado.
Hello, thank you for having me today. My name is Erica Maldonado. I'm Abel Maldonado's daughter. I'm sorry to say that my dad can't make it today. He's at the funeral services of a great friend of the Republican Party and of the law enforcement family, Rob Britton. Rob is a dear friend of my father's, and he's there honoring him today. So I'm going to fill in, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about him and a little bit about what he wants to do. First off, I want to say I'm very proud of my father and proud of what he has done as a city council member, mayor, state legislator, and lieutenant governor. He's a great father and a great businessman who helped build a half-acre farm into a successful company that now employs hundreds. I believe he'll be an excellent congressman, and he's the right choice for the 24th Congressional District during these tough times. Congress's failed economic policies and skyrocketing budget deficit hurts all of us. To get America back on track, Congress must change its ways and reject the failed policies that got us into this mess. The people of this great country need to take back our government. They need to elect members of Congress who have the guts to make the tough calls needed to cut the deficit, spur the economy, and move America forward. As a mayor and legislator, my father made the tough calls needed to help balance budgets, avert financial crises, and cut deficits. He authored legislation to establish the Office of the Independent Auditor and require a comprehensive audit of the state government. America has a national debt of over $15 trillion, and it is scheduled to grow to $17 trillion. My father knows America can't sustain budget deficits where we are borrowing 40 cents for every dollar spent. And just last month, our government spent $229 billion more than it took in just 1 month. That's why he wants to tie the hands of politicians, to stop them from spending too much. It's also why he supports a balanced budget constitutional amendment. Too much stimulus money was wasted on things that did nothing to create new jobs or economic growth. Count on my dad to reject future stimulus schemes that stimulate the economy but do little to create private sector jobs. As a legislator, my father, Abel Maldonado, worked to enact tax incentives to help create California jobs, to keep jobs in state, and to relocate jobs here. He was the author who wrote the law to fix California's broken workers' compensation system. This reform reduced fraud and saved employers billions of dollars in costs, in turn saving tens of thousands of jobs. My father knows regulatory compliance costs employers around $1.7 trillion annually. He believes reducing excessive regulation will free up money so employers can expand their operations. My dad will fight for a more jobs-friendly business environment to help America retain high-paying jobs rather than continue policies that result in them being shipped overseas. America must reduce its reliance on foreign oil by making our nation more energy independent. That is why my father will push to increasing environmentally friendly domestic production of clean coal and natural gas while expanding use of alternative energy sources such as wind, solar, and tidal power to reduce our reliance on foreign oil. My father makes tough decisions, and at times unpopular ones. But nothing made him more unpopular with his colleagues in the legislature than his new law to outlaw pay increases for state politicians when the state has a budget deficit. In Washington, count on him to shine a bright light on those who put self-interest before the good of our country. My father's record has earned him endorsements from hundreds of community leaders, city council members, county supervisors, and business owners. With other Republican candidates struggling to raise $10,000, his campaign has $700,000 in the bank. And my father is one of the few candidates in the nation who has reached contender status on the National Republican Congressional Committee rankings. For those of us who want to replace Lois Capps and tell Nancy Pelosi that she's no longer in control of the vote of the person who represents us in Congress, there is only one choice for this community. My father is the only Republican who has the endorsements, fundraising ability, and proven ability to win elections in this region. Thank you.
All right, at this time, I will offer some questions to Mr. Mitchum, and he can educate us a little bit on his position on a variety of issues. And these are questions that were compiled from email questions that we received at the Central Committee, and we've taken them, tried to streamline them, put them all together in the most efficient way possible. So these questions were provided to the candidate about 24 hours ago, so they've had some opportunity to prepare themselves to answer the question. Mr. Mitchum, a lot of Republicans today are running on platforms that include cutting spending, lowering taxes, and reducing regulations. With so many Republicans running on these principles, how will you be different, keep hold of these principles, particularly under the pressures of lobbyists, special interests, and even members of your own party?
Well, first of all, I'm not a career politician. As an example from my Screen Actors Guild experience, there's evidence that when I go in to do a job, get the job done, and I go home. I want to go into Washington like SEAL Team 6, get this job done, go home as our founding fathers said we should do. There's things that need to be done in Washington, and that's it. There's things that need to be done. We got to get them done. One of the problems about hanging around too long in politics is it's very corrupting. Take, for example, earmarks. I have a bill that I want to get passed, or I want to get $3 million for the baseball field and go leave it or something. Somebody else comes up with a bill that I find terrible. They say, Chris, we'll give you the votes for your bill or your earmarks if you get your people to support ours. But you really want to do what you want to do. You want to get something done. So you say, okay. And you hold your nose and you vote for their bill so that you can get your things through as a rider on theirs. Well, I don't want to take part of that. Now, I imagine by the time I'm through my first 2 years in Washington, just about everybody there is going to hate me. I don't want to play those politics. I will be impervious to lobbying, and I'm here for one specific reason, that's to get the job done and go home. I have to stay 50 years.
Mr. Mitchum, how do you intend to raise the money necessary to get elected, and how much do you believe it's going to take to run your campaign through the finish line?
Well, I don't want to put exact number on how much it's going to take. Yeah, this is a very interesting race because it's very high profile. Karl Rove is picked as one of the top 10. He said he's going to spend $3 to $5 million into this race. RNC said it's one of the top 2, that they will put in $1 to $2 million. So once you get past the primary, money is not going to be a problem. You can only buy up so much airtime. And Lois Capps has her million, she'll be spending that too. So the money I need to raise is I need to raise it now. Being a high profile race, there are things that I can do to really jump start this campaign. Abel has been running for a year. He's already done 3 filing periods, and although some of this, I'm sure many of you read, he takes $250,000 per change just before filing and takes it out just after. What we can do is I've already been offered to come down on the Johnny Kent show. Some of you are probably familiar with that. They have 1 million listeners down in Los Angeles. They don't care for Abel much. They have a rogues gallery they call Head on a Stick. They're so obsessed about his betrayal of the Republican Party for voting to raise taxes. They will support anybody who runs against them. So they'll come down, I'll come down there, and they will support my campaign, their listeners. If 100,000 of them give me $10, I just raised $1 million in a day. From there, I'll be doing the Roger Hitchcock show, which is a national radio show, and the Bean show. In fact, I'm seeing the Bean this evening down at the Reagan Center, an organization I belong to called FOA, so we'll eat a dinner with them. Then from there, we'll be going on and made to Hannity and nationalized it on television. So by the time we get to June, we are going to have more than enough money. And as I said, once you get past the primary, there's going to be a lot of national money pouring into this. Scott Brown, when he nationalized his campaign in 1 week, raised $1.4 million on the internet. And that's the kind of potential this has. I mean, one, I'm a Tea Party back guy, one against the establishment. And I'm the most odd thing in the world. I'm a Hollywood conservative.
Do you support the repeal of Obamacare? What? Obamacare.
That's why I'm running! Absolutely. Obamacare isn't about medicine. The Republicans offer things we can do about medicine. Tort reform. My late father-in-law was a cardiologist. He gave up his practice because of malpractice insurance. It became so expensive, I mean, he had to hire people to come in and do the paperwork, and he had to order so many tests that weren't necessary. He became a consultant at UCLA. So I can't do this anymore. Tort reform is the first thing we have to do, and serious tort reform. And all these people were backed by lawyers associations. Forget it. We just got to go through it and do this. The idea of taking down the borders on insurance companies being able to sell insurance in every state will drop the price down on health insurance. These two things alone will bring the price down. We don't have bad health care. We just have too expensive health care, and we are part of the problem. When they started doing work health care, when your job offered health care at work, all of a sudden you didn't have to worry about it. You go in, what do you care if the doctor says, I want you to take 22 tests and an MRI? You weren't paying for it, you're paying $15. Didn't matter to you. And we've already seen what Obamacare has done. Is anybody here paying health insurance premiums? We've seen them go down in the last 3 years? Anybody? Yeah. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get much worse. It is not about health care. It is about control over 1/4 of the business in the United States, which is the medical business, and it's control over the individual, your life, your lifestyle, how you care for yourself, how you take care of yourself, and even how you eat. No, we have to appeal this immediately.
We're going to do a lot of issue hopping this afternoon, so I hope that no one's disappointed. I'm not going to do a lot of follow-up questions, but that wasn't the intended format, so we're going to try to get as much information out to you as possible. So the next question, Mr. Mitchum, is do you agree with the United States' current foreign policy in the Middle East, and where do you see our relationship with the Islamic world in 10 years?
What foreign policy? My gosh! We rambled around. Mubarak, president of Egypt. Yeah, he was kind of an iron hand. He's there for 30 years. He kept the peace with Israel. He was a friend of the United States. Obama says, oh, great, an uprising in Egypt. This is terrific. But who took over 72% of the seats in the election? The Muslim Brotherhood, who vowed to destroy Israel and are enemies of the United States. Is that better than Mubarak? I don't think so. You know, we made this, going back to Cuba, we made this mistake. We backed a guy named Fidel Castro, or Batista. Fidel Castro got in, turned out he was a communist. Not only was he a communist, but it broke the Monroe Doctrine, which kept foreign entities from the other side of the world from coming to our hemisphere. We don't do very well in foreign policy. I think Donald Trump had one thing right. We need to get good business negotiators to come in and negotiate some of these things. But as far as foreign policy in the Middle East, there's only one thing we need to look at. And Syria. My God, that's a landmine waiting to step on. They have very strong air defenses. They have a cache of chemical weapons. And if we go in there and start dropping bombs on them, you're going to see a real mess. But already the Brotherhood is coming in to take over Syria. And we're seeing the Arab countries fall one at a time like dominoes to the Muslim Brotherhood. So the one thing we need to anchor our foreign policy on is treat Israel as though it's U.S. soil.
Yeah.
We need
Would you have voted in support of the recent National Defense Authorization Act that passed?
This is an interesting act. The last budget for it was $662 billion, which actually is down. But the act itself does a lot of good things. It fights domestic and international terrorism. It funds our Defense Department. It's a good act, and it's how we fund our military. I don't like the fact that it's down, I think, about $200 billion from the last one. Congress has failed, actually the Senate has failed to pass a budget, I think, for the last 3 years. So this authorization act is a way of sidestepping the fact that we don't have a budget. They're authorizing the spending even though there's no budget for it. It's completely offline. But there's something much more disconcerting about it. There's a clause in there, in section 1021, where it allows the military in our country to apprehend people in our country. And they can put them into detention without trial, like Guantanamo, without trial until the end of hostility. When a war on terror that might go on for the next 200 years, I mean, you're going to be in Guantanamo a long time. Well, confusion or vagueness of the act, it gets down to if you are a hostile to the United States or its allies, if you are befriending Al-Qaeda or Taliban, or you're a member. But they also get into if you commit belligerent acts against the country. And that's very vague, very vague. And it went back and forth between the House and the Senate numerous times, and supposedly they said, okay, this is good, let's vote it in. They voted it in. But there are people like John McCain who says, this isn't quite right. This wasn't cleared up all the way. So I would have voted against it for 2 reasons. One, it cut our military budget. And 2, there's still a vagueness that Obama can order the military to come and arrest each and every one of us and lock us away forever.
Do you think we can afford our current military budget? And if you see opportunities to reduce our military while maintaining our defense capabilities, what are they?
Well, he's already reduced the military budget. I think we need to look at doubling it. The news just came out the other day, he's going to cut it in half. And this is crazy. Look what's going on in the world. There are hot spots everywhere. And now he's looking at maybe taking military action in Iran. He's looking at military action in Syria. And he's going to cut the budget? Who's going to fight all this? There'll be nobody left. This man, either out of incompetence or design, is dismantling this country. And we need to get the people in there who put a stop to this.
Should the United States secure its borders with physical barriers? And what is your position on the deportation of individuals residing in this country illegally? And as part of that, would you have supported the DREAM Act?
I love these 3 questions. As far as our borders, yeah.
Hey, at least you don't, previously the format was you only had 2.5 minutes for 3 questions, so now you've got all the time in the world, so it should be great.
Well, we need to strengthen our borders. I've done a lot of work on this because immigration, actually illegal immigration, let's not forget the ill part of that, is a big issue in this country. And I talked to the Californians for Population Stabilization. I set up a People's Committee headed by Johnny Rios, who's a grower down in Carpinteria, obviously Hispanic by his last name. put together a paper for me as to what the Hispanic community would like to do. So I've looked at this on a lot of different levels. Across the board, we need to seal off our borders. Right now, we have about 3,000 border guards. We need 10,000. We don't have enough people guarding the borders. What I would like to do is take some of these guys coming back from Afghanistan, Iraq, who are trained in desert warfare, trained in security, put them on the border. They don't know how to take care of a guy coming across the border with an AK-47. And we need to seal this down. I would support drones flying along the border to have surveillance in the air. At the same time, we need to work at the other end of this once we've sealed our borders. I strongly favor, and everybody I've spoken to who are intense on working on this problem, I strongly favor a strong E-Verify. Because if you stop illegals from finding jobs, they'll go home. And it's a lot cheaper to have them pay their own bus fare home than have the U.S. government have to ship 13 million people back across the border. There's the issue of the agricultural community feels that the labor that comes in is very beneficial to them, and they do the stoop labor, picking strawberries and things that you really can't find Americans to do. I mean, Americans who do the construction jobs, the service jobs, but they really won't get into the agricultural jobs, the tough physical labor jobs. Well, we used to have a program back when a guy named Jerry Brown was governor called the Macero program, and he ended that, which I think was the segue to illegal immigration, because these people would come to the country to work, because that's what they did, and they couldn't get back, because now they're here illegally. And it started, it was a foundation of illegal immigration. I think we need to get back to the Macero program, the work program, where these people can come, as they did in the past, do the job, work the fields, when the season's over, go back home. Anybody don't want to uproot themselves. They'd rather be in their own country. So I think that there are a number of different aspects that we have to look at. Then, of course, you have your felons and your illegals. The numbers vary from a third to a half of our prisoners just here in California are illegal aliens. You need to get them out as soon as they serve their time. To deport them. There are some that we have to deport. I would support cutting off government aid to any state that is giving social welfare to illegals. And that will probably stop the state from giving it to illegals, so that people who come here not to contribute to the country, but to take from the country, they'll go back home and they no longer get a free handout. There are a lot of different things we can do. The DREAM Act. No, I think the DREAM Act is a terrible thing. You take a kid who grows up in California, and he's going to go to University of California, Los Angeles, and he gets knocked out of his seat by a kid in LA who's here illegally. I'm sorry, but I think a legal resident of California should have precedent over an illegal resident.
What is your opinion
Have any
regarding...
focus?
Yeah. I'm from the UCSD College of Health. Government services.
Another rare bird. Conservative Hollywood actor and conservative UCSD student. There'll be a dodo bird. All right. Next question is, what is your opinion regarding the United Nations' influence on U.S. policy relative to climate change and gun control?
Well, I think climate change started back with the Kyoto Agreement back in '97. They got into this. You know, I have to set two different big picture frameworks here. First of all, the United Nations started out with the League of Nations that fell flat on its face, and then it got rebooted up with the United Nations. And I have a big issue with the Humanitarian Committee of the United Nations being filled with nations that are committing atrocities to their own people. I just have an issue with a number of things that the United Nations do. And I would not be opposed to say, you know, go to The Hague, get an office next to that other great place, the World Court, and set up shop there. Sell the United Nations building in New York. We'll probably make $3 billion from Donald Trump selling it. And the city won't have to have so many parking places taken up by people with diplomatic immunity parking on the streets in New York. So, you know, I'm not a big fan of the United Nations, and we are the one huge contributor to it. If we stopped paying our bill, it would fold in a week. That's the reality of the United Nations. The next thing is, I actually believe in the sovereignty of countries. I've worked in 14 different countries around the world. I like going to France and enjoying the French culture. I like going to Hong Kong and enjoying the Chinese culture. I like this. I like the difference of cultures and enjoying the different cultures. And I don't want to see this one world, one society government. I don't want that. And what the United Nations is trying to do with their Agenda 21 and their international gun ban, they're trying to get us under the same government. And I'm sorry, this is the United States of America. We set our own laws here, and these type of things start to infringe on our Constitution. So I'm totally against that.
With the purchasing power of our currency being steadily eroded, a recent limited audit of the Federal Reserve revealed trillions of dollars of transfers to foreign banks. Would you support current legislation that would allow deeper audits and better transparency of Fed actions, and why?
Well, the audits really aren't the issue. It's what the audits are discovering is the issue. And John McCain managed to slip in on the God, who was it? The Dodd-Frank bill. And they probably didn't see it coming in because the bill's 2,000 and some odd pages long. He slipped in this little amendment. They got the audit going. They found that from December 2007 to June 2009, 2.5 years, the feds spent 16 trillion, that's with a T, dollars, giving it out to financial institutions. Goldman Sachs, I believe they got something like 3.5 trillion. Stanley Morgan got over 2 trillion. We're talking T with a trillion here. No, I'm sorry. Goldman Sachs got 814 billion. The TARP bill was for 700 billion. It was nothing but a beard, a front for what the feds were doing. That's the issue here, that the feds are going out and doing this behind-the-scenes spending and a bank propping up. And they gave money to the Bank of Scotland, to German banks. They're playing games all around the world. And if we start going into 10 years, 15 years, 20 years as to what they've been doing, it's going to be frightening as to what they're doing. And the decision is not should we have deeper audits. What do we do when we find out how deep this goes?
What type of income tax structure do you support? A progressive tax like we have now, a flat tax, a VAT, a fair tax, or something else altogether?
Well, in one of the countries where I lived and worked, and this is going back quite a while, the country's now, like everybody else, in financial trouble. Back then, they had a flat tax, but it was progressive, but in a different direction than our progressive tax. Their tax base was 14%. And to put it into US dollars, the first $10,000 you made was tax-free. The next $100,000 you made was 14%. The next $100,000 after that was 13.5%. The next $100,000 after that was 13%, and it got down to 11%, encouraging people, rather than saying, I can't work anymore, I've got to go up into another tax bracket. It encouraged people to make more money because then they had more money to spend, and encouraged them to keep working and to do better. And the country had 3.5% unemployment. It was the fastest growing country in the Western world with this type of tax structure, and I think it would work here.
Did you support the open primary initiative that recently passed in California, and why or why not?
Well, I'm sure you all know that Abel was the one who put that on the ballot. And the way he originally wrote it, you didn't have to state what party you belonged to. Matter of fact, I think the way he wrote it, you could state any party that you wanted to. Jerry Brown put the X on that a couple of days ago, about 10 days ago, saying no, whatever party you're registered as, that's what has to go on the ballot. And I'm sorry, I think if you've made a commitment to a party, Democrat or Republican, if you made a commitment to a party, you should be able to elect the people who are going to represent you. That the people who are independent and have not committed to a political philosophy, then they can wait to see who the candidates are later on and find out who they want to vote for. But this open primary, I mean, we would not be here today doing this if we didn't have an open primary. I'm against it.
As a congressman, where will you stand on issues such as carbon taxes, cap and trade, and similar legislation on a national level?
Well, let's take cap and trade first. Cap and trade does to businesses what Obamacare does to individuals in the medical community. It puts a grip around their throat and chokes them down. Obama said that let a new company start a new coal mine or start a new coal plant. We will regulate them into bankruptcy. What kind of a statement is that? We will regulate them into bankruptcy. The whole thing is based on global warming that this man caused. I'm a voting member of the Motion Picture Academy, and I actually wrote a letter to him saying that you need to take back Al Gore's Academy Award for Inconvenient Truth. That wasn't a documentary. That was based on fake facts. They didn't listen to me. But the whole concept of global warming, there's only one thing you need to look at. And anybody here can Google this. There's a company called CAMCO, C-A-M-C-O. It's been around for 15 years. They have offices in China, Johannesburg, South America, all around the world. And their business is setting up carbon trading. They're making carbon deals, selling off